Stay on the beach, the place to be. All the tips and ways to make the first.
Thank you. The most difficult part of the presentation is done for me, so from now on I will continue in English. Thank you. So, I'd like to start with a little task. Is this working? I don't know if the slides are moving. That's okay. Anyway, I would like you all to start imagining that you are a bartender in a beach bar. Okay, but you're not just any bartender, you're the expert. So you're in a very cool beach bar, like you're the best of the best, yeah? So you've been doing this for ages. And one day you're preparing your station, like you've already learned about SEO cocktails today, so this shouldn't be too difficult, right? But you're preparing your station, your garnish, you're expecting customers, this is your own bar now, you're very proud of it. And then a customer walks in. And it's a very unusual customer because all they say is, impress me. So you do your best. I mean, you've been in this industry for ages. You prepare the best cocktail you love the most. You know it works for everyone. It's a Mai Tai. I hope all of you love it. And you give it to the customer. You even taste it before. You know it's excellent. So it's perfect, basically. So you give it to them, and they drink it. They say thank you, and they leave. Everything's great, right? Until next day, when you realize that this customer was an undercover reviewer, and now they publish the most horrific review about your little bar, which will probably end your business. It's a complete disaster. So my question to you, what the hell went wrong? You're the expert, you know everything was right, you know you prepared, you know it's a great cocktail, so I'd like to, if anyone has any ideas, feel free to just shout out what might have gone wrong. There are no wrong answers. just curious. Anyone? Bad service, okay. In what sense? Everything was actually fine. The reviewer is just an idiot, right? He published the review. It's going to end your bar. It's like horrible, like it's a disaster. Okay, I'd like you all to sort of keep these thoughts in mind and see how that changes by the end of the presentation, or what you've learned from it, because what I was showing you here is actually a very similar issue that happens with SEO buy-in. So we are the experts, right? So we prepare our project, we collect our data, we prepare our business case, we pitch it, we get sign-off. Everything is supposed to go ahead, except it's a disaster. Implementation gets delayed, or client churns, issues come up, and it's just not working, even though you got the sign-off. So it can be so daunting sometimes that you might even think about quitting SEO and just going to work in a bar instead, right? Because that would be easier, except it's not. So the issue we're going to talk about today is not a very SEO-specific issue, but it's very important for SEO as well. And that's why most of the projects and strategies fail. So I'm going to wake you up from this little daydream, and we're going to continue with SEO. And the truth is, SEO requires people skills. And I know we all know this, but we really like to sort of ignore it. But unfortunately, we can't. And it doesn't matter if you just started in SEO, if you're a manager, if you're a technical SEO, if you're working with devs, it needs people skills. And I want to tell you that the buy-in process actually isn't a task you need to complete. It's not that three-step process that I showed you at the beginning. It's not something on your to-do list. It's actually a process. It's a tool that you can use to optimize and prioritize. So when everything's going well, I don't think anyone ever experienced this, but when everything's going well and everything's optimized, this is the boarding cycle, right? Like you get buy-in, you get sign-off, everything gets implemented perfect. If anyone had that, then please tell me how they've done it, because I think we've never faced that situation as SEOs. But when it's the buy-in-ish cycle, it's a little bit more messy. We take one step forward, two steps backwards, And it's just sort of a very daunting situation. So this is what I want to talk about, and I'm going to zoom into this cycle to talk about the issues that happen, because it's a 3-step process to simplify it. So it all starts with fake buy-in, and we're going to talk a lot about this today. It's buy-in that actually happens, so you get a yes from someone or you get sign-off, but it happens without any commitment. And that eventually leads to half results, which means that there is actually no accountability. So this is, you've got a really nice project signed off to publish local pages, until suddenly IT says, there is no way in hell you're publishing those local pages with that agency on that CMS. This project is just done, right? So that happens, and that means because there's no accountability from people to get the things done. And that leaves you with lack of proof that you could use next time you're trying to get buy-in. And it amplifies already existing trust issues. So what we need to learn is to spot fake buy-in. And it's harder than you think. And that's because we have to be skeptical when we get a yes. But unfortunately, a lot of times we focus so much on getting buy-in that we do it at the cost of commitment. So I want you to think about these questions and how they make you feel. Do you want to increase your organic traffic? Do you want to provide a better customer experience? Do you want your content to rank and convert better? Wouldn't it be better to invest in the channel that drives the highest ROI? I mean, if you're anything like me, you're probably feeling really annoyed and getting triggered that these are all the unsolicited LinkedIn DMs we are all getting and hate. And that's because they look like questions, but they are not questions. There is no real answer to it. The only answer really is yes, but you don't want to say that answer. So we need to remember that if we ask fake questions, we will get fake answers. Which is why we need to avoid the yes train, which are these questions. So it's actually an outdated sales technique, and I'm sure a lot of you will think, yeah, but I'm not in sales, I don't do this. I'm sure you do. It's a very natural behavior, but very unhelpful. And that's because no one likes to be rejected. We do like to hear yes. So what we need to remember that yes without commitment is actually worse than getting a no. Rejection is actually an opportunity to develop a better solution. And rejection is actionable and helps to address unconscious bias. So this is great. We're done, right? We learned this. Unfortunately not. It's much easier said than done. And that's because we're human beings. So our brains, our most important job is actually not thinking. It's running a little warm body that has become very, very complex, biologically speaking. Says Lisa Feldman-Barrett, PhD, she's a neuroscientist. She's written this book, 7.5 Lessons About the Brain. So I really want you to keep this in mind. Your brain's job is to keep you alive, to keep you functioning, not to think. And that's why bias exists, which is why we need to be aware of it. So I want you to think about bias as like a frozen margarita, giving you the confidence to hit the dance floor or to talk to someone you were scared to talk to. Because often when we talk about bias, we put this as like this horrible thing, but it has a very good reason of being there, right? It's actually helping us to make decisions about our lives, to be confident, to research data and prove that we need that promotion, or to get that frozen margarita and go up to your boss and say that you need a pay rise because you're the best. But just as frozen margaritas, it has its time and place. And it is actually quite hard to control. So it certainly has drawbacks, which is why we need to talk about it and which is why we need to address it. Now, the next thing I want to tell you is this myth of rational thinking, because every time we talk about controlling our bias, we think, well, I'm just going to spend more time thinking rationally and taking a step back. But unfortunately, rational thinking, as it's a very nice metaphor and we all love it, it's not a true thing. It doesn't exist. So if you think you're rational, that's a feeling. Rationality is a feeling of comfort with your own logic and reasoning. So the world makes much less sense than you think. The coherence comes mostly from the way your mind works. You make sense of the world around you, And that's why you feel that you can be rational. And this is from Daniel Kahneman, who wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. So he actually uses rational thinking as a metaphor, and he's very specific about it in his book. So this is why when you present data, it doesn't prompt commitment, because feelings do. And this is why you have to use data to tell what to do, and you need to use stories to tell why do it. And you have to keep your narrative focused on the outcome. So make sure that when you're presenting something, you're keeping in mind what the outcome is for that other person. Now, if we are all irrational, which we are, as I just said, then how can we trust our decision making in business? Well, we can't. That's the answer. I'm not sure how many of you have ever have worked or currently still working as individual SEOs, making the responsible for all the decisions. Hands up if you ever worked as like a solo SEO. Okay, I'm glad to see that there are definitely more teams here. I'm asking this because there's a really interesting study, and I will have resources in the end so you can access all of this, to prove how much better are diverse team decisions compared to individual decision making. So the 66% says that teams on average, any team, 66% of the time make better decisions than an individual, but 87% of the time if it's gender, age, and geographically diverse. So, whoa. Oh, okay, thank you. Not sure what happened. I don't feel like I touched anything, but we're at the very end of it. I had a very nice quote there until I go back about the book Biased, and it was talking about how you need to address your bias in order to engage in healthy conflict. Can we get back to the slide? Anyway, so I'll skip through that quote and you can read it later on, and I'll link that book as well. But essentially, diversity gives you an opportunity to engage in this healthy conflict, because that's when conflict comes out, when you are engaging with people who have a different experience, a different perspective from you. So we actually are now at the stage where so it's where it says be skeptical of yes, and then the checked bias is ticked off, I believe. So because that was our first step, we have to be skeptical of getting a yes, and we do that by actually understanding and checking on our own bias. And the next step is engaging in healthy conflict. Oh, perfect, thank you. So once we get to engaging in healthy conflict, we have to remember that healthy conflict requires a safe environment, right? So you will only be able to get these opinions and views of others if you're encouraging it with using trust and maintaining respect and practicing a lack of judgment. Chris Voss, who used to be a hostage negotiator, now leads a sales academy in New York, says conflict brings out truth, creativity, and resolution. So I like to think about it this way. It's better to know that I'm wrong than to think that I'm right. And that's again because if I know I'm wrong, I can change it. It's actionable, right? So seeking out views that are different to yours is actually one of the biggest strengths. And that's because it's not always easy to convince someone a need exists if they don't have that need themselves. So just think about your developers, your content teams. If they don't have that need, then they won't understand like why the content team would have to update the sitemaps. Like, why is it not okay that it's updated every 3 months? Like, if they are publishing new articles every week or something, like, they have to understand why that need actually exists, but it's going to be hard for them, and you have to appreciate that. And of course, it goes the other way around as well, that you have to understand their needs. So understand who will be affected by your requests and how. Now, it's as simple as this. When people don't unload their opinions and feel like they've been listened to, they genuinely won't really get on board. So it's what I've mentioned about the IT team just basically saying your project that you paid for and you have it sort of lined out with the agency is just not going to go ahead. If you have to make sure that you involve the stakeholders early on in the planning process, so that could be IT as in our example, and you seek out their concerns so they don't become objections. Apply critical thinking and ask better questions. Definitely don't follow the yes train. Try to ask those open-ended questions and try to really seek out what the concerns might be for them, and do your research that way as well. So we engaged in healthy conflict and we addressed the concerns. The last step we need to do is to assess the maturity of the business, because context is everything. And maturity isn't linear. I know we like to think about it as like, this is how mature the business is, and then it's going to get better every year. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. It's a continuous process that requires nurturing and reflecting. So this is a resource that I will share with you. It's a free spreadsheet I've created with Tori Gray, and it's a maturity chart, or organizational maturity graph, OMG for SEO, where you have a bunch of areas for culture, strategy, technology, and efficiency. So you can really make sure that you're not missing any part of the picture, and you can ask all those questions from your business. And this will really help you to really see where the business is. And the reason why I said you should reassess, because think about when business changes happen, how does it impact the maturity graph? So what happens if a key champion for SEO leaves the business? Your CMO might have been your biggest support, and now they suddenly leave, and the new CMO, you have no relationship with them, they have a background in PPC, they've never done SEO. That's surely going to impact everything, right? What happens if you lose budget for a tool that was really making things a lot more efficient? Now you're going to have to spend a lot of extra hours doing work, right? Or your business gets acquired. Obviously, everything can turn upside down. Or your team grows significantly, as I believe the next one is. So all of these will impact that, which is why reflection is so important, so you don't just go ahead with a planned strategy that you had from the beginning. Now, as we know, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and different stages need different strategies to succeed. So we assess the maturity, we consider the context. This really helps us to learn to let go of the time-waster projects that we hold so dear to our heart sometimes. And that really reminds us that if everything is important, then nothing really is. Like, if you really want to get everything done on your roadmap, it's much more likely that nothing will ever get done. So I'd like to, again, reinforce this message. Buy-in isn't the task to be completed. It's this tool that you can really use to optimize and prioritize. And I finished on time. I can't believe it. Thank you so much. This is the link that you can use for the resources that I had.
Of course. Thank you, Petra.
Thank you.
Here's your
Stay on the beach, the place to be.